My name's Almira Tanner. I'm the lead organizer of DxE Action everywhere, and I've been vegan since 2010. Vegetarian for a really long time before that. I went vegetarian when I was 10 years old. Basically, my friend asked me why I ate animals if I loved them so much, and that was a really great question. And so that basically prompted me to become a vegetarian at the age of 10. And yeah, I never really was educated about like the dairy and egg industries or all of the other things that humans do to exploit animals. In late 2009, early 2010, I started researching like how to be healthier, because I was basically had eaten like the university crappy diet for many years and was feeling the effects of that. And that kind of led me to learn more about the actual dairy and egg industries. And that is when I realized that if I was a vegetarian for ethical reasons, probably actually should stop eating dairy and eggs, for the same reasons, because animals are exploited in those industries as well. Yeah, that kind of set me on the path of the couple months of, I can't give up pizza, and then realizing that ethics were more important than pizza, and then also that you can have pizza. And yeah, so went vegan in April of 2010.
So when you went vegan, was there anything in particular that really kind of brought it home to you ethically?
Not in the sense of like I watched one graphic video and then all of a sudden my life was changed. I knew why I should do it, but I was kind of, I was trying to make excuses and all of those sorts of things. And I didn't know anybody who was vegan at the time. So that also probably slowed, my awakening to all of that. And I actually posted on Facebook, like, do I know anybody who's vegan? Like an acquaintance, like not even that good of a friend, kind of friend acquaintance of mine said like my ex-boyfriend is vegan or something. So I had a phone call with him, I think. That's how I remember it was a phone call. And I was like basically kind of whining to him about how I didn't want to give up cheese. And I was expecting a lot of like sympathy for that and expecting him to be like, it's fine, you can just eat cheese. But he was kind of like, that's ridiculous. If you think that this is wrong, you shouldn't not do it because you want to eat cheese. And I was like, huh. In my mind, he was pretty aggressive about it. I don't actually know if he was, but like that stuck with me. Someone just being like honest about it. And that's kind of when I was like, all right, I think it was right before Easter. I was like, I'm gonna eat chocolate on Easter, like dairy chocolate on Easter. And after that, I'm done. And yeah.
Was it hard?
No, like I think it certainly was harder than it is now in the sense of like trying to like know all the things with dairy, and I didn't like soy milk and that kind of stuff at the beginning. And I think especially as someone who was vegetarian for a really long time, my diet was very cheese heavy, so that was a little bit difficult. But I don't remember times when I'm like, this is just too hard, I should just not do that. I think it's, for me, having like relative privilege and access to food and living in a big city at the time, like it was really not that hard.
Did you notice anything different physiologically, mentally, or emotionally after you made the change?
There was a lot of things that were happening in my life at that time, so it's hard to say it was like actually like the food that I was eating. The whole other backstory of all of that is at the time I was working in a lab experimenting on animals. Oh, wow. And that was my grad program, and it was pretty miserable for various reasons. Like obviously the ethical reasons was a huge part of that, and then also like never really wanted to do research of any type. I think academia was not something I really should have gone into. And so I quit that program as, 6 months into it. And so I think after like that happened, and I was also vegan at the time, going vegan and then quitting that. So I felt a lot better. But I don't think necessarily it was just because I was eating healthier. It was just like I was doing things that I cared a lot more in my life and not doing things that I found ethically very terrible.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I guess when you're super young, so maybe you just, maybe you're a little bit more like invincible, like as you get older, the changes might be more salient or obvious. But some people when they're young, they get a lot of acne and stuff from dairy, and they notice a difference in that, or asthma. I guess you didn't have any of that. After that, you ended up eventually getting into DxE. So how did that happen?
I was vegan since 2010, not really doing any activism at all, like probably some like posting online, but not many sort of like direct action or organizing. That went on basically till like late 2013. I went to different grad school, moved back home to my home city of Vancouver when I was done, and I kind of felt like, okay, my life's ready to start now. I have my career, I'm back into my hometown, and so it's like time to find new friends and like kind of start living my life. And that led me to kind of search out like making vegan friends, because I still didn't have a ton of them at the time. And also back in a, like not new city to me, but back home after 2 years. And yeah, so I started meeting vegan people and going to some meetups, and that's how I got connected to someone who was talking to Wayne, who's one of the co-founders of DxE, on like a Facebook group. And Wayne was convincing this guy, Wilson, to like organize DxE Actions in Vancouver. And so through, him and mutual friend, I got invited. I think I didn't go to the first ever DxE Action in Vancouver. I don't think I knew about it at that point, but I went to the second ever DxE Action in Vancouver, and that was like December of 2013.
And I guess that was pretty impressionable because like you're all up in it now, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the first one wasn't really, like it was just like, we protested outside of Chipotle. We didn't even go inside the Chipotle. We were still like a little too nervous about doing that. But it just kind of became a thing that I was doing basically every month. There was like a protest and I would show up to most of them. The thing that was like very impressionable and like transformative for me was, so May of the next year, so May of 2014, I went to California. Like it was the first ever DxE forum. It's like a conference that DxE hosts, and that was the first ever one. So there was maybe like 40 people there.
Is that the Animal Liberation Conference?
Yeah, it's now called the Animal Liberation Conference. Back then it was called the DxE Forum, and all the people doing DxE stuff kind of around the country and then up in Canada, and I think maybe some other countries, but like it was really small, like I would say 50 people max, all came to Berkeley for this little conference, and that was really incredible to me, like hearing the social science and the thought process and the strategy behind everything. And like, that was, I think, the largest gathering of animal rights people that I'd ever been a part of at that point. So that felt very like, wow, which is funny to think that that's like 40 people. But that is, I think, probably like the more important turning point for me than like that first protest.
Wow. And now how many people attend that?
Yeah, upwards of like 1,000 people that we had in 2019. So it's grown a lot.
Yeah. And what's your title with DxE?
I am the lead organizer.
And that's a pretty big role, right? I mean, do you have a lot of responsibilities with that?
Yeah, it's like, we're a grassroots organization, so we don't always have like the similar titles as other, maybe more like traditional NGOs, but I would say equivalent to executive director. Has a lot of responsibilities, but I have a lot of people that I work with and organize with, and I mean that as in like volunteers as well. And yeah, so it's like very much a team effort, but I have my hands in a lot of different things.
Well, I know a lot of people have been like telling me I've got to interview you because you apparently are a big deal and everybody really has a lot of respect for you and appreciation. For anybody who might not know a lot about DxE, what is kind of like the elevator pitch on it?
Yeah, so we are a grassroots network of animal rights activists, and our mission is to achieve revolutionary social and political change for animals in one generation. So what that means is, the social change is we are taking actions to change cultural norms, the way that society views animals, reframing the conversation around them as not like food or property. And then political change too, we understand the need that we really do need to change our systems, like our legal system, our legislative system. There need to be laws to protect animals. We're not going to be able to just individually convince every single person to go vegan and then all the animals will not be on the farms. Like this is going to require a huge systemic change to happen. And we do that through community building and nonviolent direct action, which is, I think, the pillars of most successful social movements in the past, at least in the United States.
Yeah. And what kind of structure does it have? Like if you're going to like delineate the organizational structure, there's people that are lawyers in it, take on different roles.
So we have 5 values, and as long as you follow those values and our mission, or, take action to advance the mission, you can start a DxE chapter and participate or do an action all by yourself in the name of DxE. And so there are chapters all over the world, and they kind of pop up and then, they die down and all that kind of stuff. So there's just a lot of activity. Our kind of hub and our central organizing space is in the Bay Area in California. And so that's where a lot of like the infrastructure comes from as well. So like our comms team, our social media team, our legal team. Other chapters might have like little versions of that, but it's certainly the place that has the most resources and uses the most resources, both in terms of money and also like humans and capacity. At this point, I would say about the equivalent of 12 to 13 people doing this full time, which is really incredible, but then hundreds of people who are volunteering and volunteering in various ways. Lawyers, that's a very relatively high skill type of volunteering, like you can't just pretend to do that. But then we have people who have no background in, whatever it is, and they join our protest team, or they learn to edit videos, or they organize community events, or like food serves, like giving out vegan food to people and all that kind of stuff. So there's like a lot of space, I think, for people to get plugged in, especially if you're in the Bay Area. But if you're not, there might be a chapter near you, or you could start one.
I have a couple of videos from different DxE people on Vegan Linked already. A couple of people that made a comment, they were concerned because they felt like maybe it was just through a rumor that they heard, somebody ill-prepared got in the mix and did something and it wasn't properly trained, or got in trouble and didn't have help getting out of it. What do you do to prepare people for this sort of stuff, like these chapters and stuff?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure like what that's referring to, but I can speak to it generally, which is that I think we do try to provide a lot of training, like the Animal Liberation Conference, like we have a resource library. We don't recommend people just go out and do like open rescue or civil disobedience without really thinking it through. But at the same time, like there are people all over the world who take action as DxE, and like we don't control them all. So, people are going to do that. There's no like permission required from like me. If give an example, there's like an amazing chapter in Seoul, South Korea. They can do whatever they want to do as long as it's following our values. And we talk, of course, but it's not like they have to like come to us to get permission to do anything. It's like they know what's best for their local community. They run incredible actions and campaigns. Yeah, we're there to like support with resources and infrastructure, but yeah.
Does everybody go through the ALC kind of training?
No, they don't have to. I mean, I think that's a great place to come to get trained, but that only happens like once a year, and it's in California, so it's a pretty big barrier, and like you don't want to wait a year. We have like online trainings, and then we have like a resource library, and also if you are starting a chapter, then we have our international coordination team, which is like a team of like 3 or 4 people who kind of support all those chapters. So there's like a, like not like a formal mentorship relationship where you're like really being mentored, but there's someone that you can go to if you're like, I don't know how to do this thing, or how do I find out this thing? Then there's,
Doing an open rescue. Did they all do that? All these chapters go live and do these open rescues, or?
No, there's like absolutely like no requirement that people do civil disobedience. I think that's one misconception that I think people are like, oh, I really love DxE, but I can't join because I don't want to get arrested, which is like, actually a very, very small percentage of the things that we do. And some chapters do rescues and protests that are legally risky, and others don't.
Okay, so that's good to know. I'm glad you got that in there. And then if they did, do you offer support to bail these people out?
It depends. Like we can't just like say like, hey, yeah, if you do this action with DxE, then we'll pay all your legal bills, because like then like there could be like 1,000 people doing that all the time, and that would be totally unsustainable. If you're someone out there listening to this and thinking about doing that, you should talk to people first to make sure you know what financial support is out there.
Backup plan. Have a backup plan. Right?
Or I wouldn't even say a backup plan. Have like an actual plan, and then maybe a backup plan if that plan doesn't work. So I guess the short answer is no. But of course, like we do have legal support, but it's for things that are planned and discussed in advance typically. Most of the time we don't bail people out of jail, and they just wait and get released on their own recognizance after a couple days. It's called jail no bail, and yeah.
And then the right to rescue, that's kind of like a big deal, right? Would that be like the main thing like you're accomplishing a lot of times when you do these incredible open rescues?
The Right to Rescue is a campaign that we have. It's something that is part of our ultimate end goal of Rosa's Law, which is that, rescuing an animal who is in need of help is not a crime, and it's the right thing to do. So it is like one of the reasons that we do open rescue is to challenge the legal system in that way and get that in the courts and try to fight the property status of animals and to try to get the necessity defense in those court cases, because that would help for that. But it's not the only reason that we rescue animals from farms, and it's not like our only campaign, but especially in the last 6 months, it has been a pretty big focus for us.
And what are some of the most successful accomplishments or things you're most proud of having accomplished thus far?
Very recently, that's a very recent win, which is probably one of our biggest wins so far, honestly, is the Smithfield trial. This was a trial of 2 activists who investigated a massive pig factory farm owned by Smithfield in Utah. They were facing up to 11 years in prison. Well, originally up to 60 years in prison, but by the time trial started, it was down to max of 11, and the jury found them not guilty on all accounts. They were facing burglary and theft charges for rescuing 2 piglets from that farm. It's not a legal precedent in the sense that it doesn't mean that now, no matter where you are, you can go in and rescue those animals because Paul and Wayne were acquitted. That is not what it means, but it is a really important social precedent or cultural precedent where this has happened and a jury has found them not guilty, got major media attention, and so I think that's been one of our biggest wins. Other things that come to mind are less concrete things, but just opening the Berkeley Animal Rights Center, which is the first community center for animal rights in the country. And I don't think that's wow, you changed this law, but I think having that has really helped us train and grow our movement. Same sort of thing with establishing the Animal Liberation Conference. That's something I'm really proud of. Another kind of policy thing that comes to mind is this was certainly not a solo effort, but we were a big part of a coalition that helped ban the sale of fur in California. And we were the people that were kind of providing the physical bodies, the people who were going to show up at the rallies and the votes and speak in support and all of that. So those are kind of some of the top
Awesome.
Wins.
Yeah. Animal Liberation Conference. I've been wanting to attend that. It's about a week long, and tell me what that's like. And is that something anybody can get involved in?
Yep. You don't need to have any experience. You don't need to be part of any organization. You don't need to be vegan to come. Anybody is welcome to come to the conference. Yeah, it's typically a week, sometimes 6 days. There's some parts of it that's more traditional conference-like, talks and panels and workshops. But the thing that makes it really different is that we also do actions together. So it's not just sitting and listening. It's the opportunity to go right away and put those skills to use. So there's usually a big march. There's usually some action that involves some level of civil disobedience in it. Or historically there has been every year, tons of other little protests and vigils or outreach events and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's something that makes it pretty different from other conferences.
Anything else that anybody could do to be involved besides maybe starting a chapter or going to the ALC?
Yes, starting a chapter or joining a chapter is good. Going to the conference is good. You can obviously follow us on social media and share the stuff. That's always really awesome. But I would really encourage people to do that and find something that you can do in person with other people together. Even that's just community building, potlucks in your community or something. I think it's really important that we don't only rely on social media. I think social media is an incredible tool and it's great and it has changed a lot of people's minds and shown the power of our movement. But I think it's really important too that people meet in person and build those connections in real life as well. So those would be the things I would say. But then there's also not just DxE out there, right? There's a ton of animal rights groups. And if you're not totally vibing with DxE or there's not a chapter in your area and there's a chapter of the SAFE movement or whatever, I think getting out there and doing activism is really important.
I'm so glad you mentioned community because I learned a long time ago in the mid-90s that when I was taking a college course called Death, Dying, and Living, that community in America was dissolving and individualism was kind of emerging to the point of causing a lot of issues on various levels. Community to me is quintessential to helping people do this sustainably. When people eat animals and it's almost like they cook animals and they share it as a form of love. Here I cooked this turkey for you, whatever, right? And then it becomes this comfort food. And then now we're expecting them not to accept that or give that and be isolated almost. And it can be very isolating being vegan. And so I'm really glad you mentioned that because that's doing potlucks is a fantastic way to find other like-minded people and help people share this and spread the love, And so that's so cool you mentioned it. It's not even DxE related, but you're right, it is an excellent.
Well, I'll push back on that because I think it is very DxE related. Okay. It's just, I think a lot of people, it doesn't make for a New York Times article. No, and it's not going to be like a really awesome, like clickbaity video that people are going to watch, which is like people having a potluck. But I would say we spend, by far more time at community events than we do at Actions. Like we have a meetup every Saturday. We have like vegan pop-ups every month in the Bay Area. There's a ton of stuff going on. It's just like probably not what people see on the internet because it's just less exciting to watch people at a pop-up than it is at a protest, but it is like totally at the foundation of everything that we do.
So could somebody start a DxE chapter and simply just do potlucks?
We encourage people to start that way, at least to like find other people. I think that our international coordination team kind of requires chapters who are active to do some sort of action every quarter. But that doesn't need to be locking yourself to something. So I mentioned our 5 core values. One of them is that we build purposeful communities. And so community is awesome, but our communities have a purpose, which is to advance animal rights. And so we're bringing people together, but we're not just bringing people together for the sake of it. We're bringing people together to then go out in the world and do stuff and to support each other, because I think the rates of recidivism, so many people go back to eating animals, people that I know who took action for animals, but then something happens in their life and they leave the movement, and before you know it, they're eating animals again. So I think that community is so important for various reasons. So yes, I think community is a perfect way to start a chapter.
What are those other core values, real quick?
Yeah, so you're putting them on the spot, but I know them. They're not in any particular order, but we are fiercely nonviolent. We build purposeful communities. We do our homework. We lead by serving, and we aim to do exceptional work for animals.
Awesome. As soon as I learned about DxE, I was so stoked and just inspired by what you guys were doing. I wanted to donate. So I made a monthly donation for a couple of years. How can people donate if they want to support you guys?
Yeah, if you want to donate, you can go on our website, directactioneverywhere.com. You can also donate on Venmo if that's easier. I think it's just at Direct Action Everywhere. You can donate Bitcoin, you can donate check. That's super helpful because I think we do a lot with relatively small amounts of money, but at the same time, you definitely need funding. And so thank you for donating and anyone else who does.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everything you're doing, dedicating your life to this. You have a quote you want to share?
I don't know where it's from. I read it somewhere. I did not make it up, but it's hope is more the consequence of action than its cause. I really like that because I think sometimes people look at activists and they're like, wow, those people must be really optimistic about the state of the world, but I think the world sucks, so I'm not going to I'm not going to go out there and protest or something like that. And I think it's actually the reverse. I think participating in a movement and taking action is the thing that actually helps build hope and optimism when you're around other people. So yeah, hope is more the consequence of action than its cause, which is a little bit wordy, but I really like it. And then the other thing that I would suggest people read is What to Do When the World is Ending. It's a Medium blog post. It's not this big book or anything like that, but you can just Google it. I think the author's name is Yotam Orem. The whole blog post is amazing. There's a paragraph in there near the end that's really, really powerful, and I definitely haven't memorized it because it's a whole paragraph. Yeah, when you feel what is the point of everything, that is a really good paragraph to read.